Well, I must say this is really a first for me. I've never, ever in my entire life given any sort of speech in a church. So, DevOps Days is all about new stuff, I would say. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for organizing it. I know this is a lot of effort. And I want to actually talk about DevOps. Be laughing. So you might know me. I like to automate stuff. I'm here with a t-shirt that says automate, and I believe in that. And one of the things that's really hard to automate are actually secrets or credentials or stuff that not everybody should see. So I want to talk about how to automate that away. Who needs passwords anyway? Quick look, what will we be doing today? So DevOps, obviously, talk about the problem. You might have heard about passkeys, so I decided to add in one slide for passkeys. I would like to make a few suggestions what we can do instead of passwords. And I'll a little bit talk about what keeps us back. You will walk away with practical solutions that you can pursue further. So, quick step back to DevOps. This is my personal DevOps picture. And what's important that the people are always on one side. Here, that's people. Everybody is an engineer. Doesn't matter what it says on your title or in your job, or if you write Python, JavaScript, Java, you're an engineer. If you write Bash, you're also an engineer. Maybe more hardcore, but you're still an engineer. On the other side, we have our tech, servers in the data center, servers in the cloud. And our job as engineers is to impose our will upon that tech. That's what engineers do. And we use automation for that, hopefully. If not, it's called manual effort. So in the good case, when your setup looks like that, you'll be happy DevOps campers. And if your boss asks you, when are we done with DevOps? You can throw them my definition, which is 5 criteria that you can check your own work, team, setup, technology, whatever against. And if you check off all these criteria, then DevOps will be the result that you achieve. And that's the important message here. DevOps is not a tool, it's not a title, it's not a team, it's a result of doing the right things. And only that. Take a look at my homepage. You'll find a bit more information, talks, articles, and whatnot. Today, actually, we're going to be talking about the last line. And it will come back to us later to help understand the problem of passwords. So why static credentials? Why are they important in our world? Again, you see always people on the one left side, tech on the right side. That's my standard setup. And if you draw a picture that doesn't have people on one side and the servers on the other side, you should ask yourself, what are we doing wrong? By the way, good tip, always start with the user. Any picture you draw, start with the user. Will help you to get it right. So, credentials in a nutshell, users, people, whatever, perform a request to a server. It needs to be authenticated, so there is a password. Then we get a response. The response is content, and the actual password is both username and password mixed together. And everybody thinks that's okay. Well, I had to challenge that because I couldn't explain myself why this is okay or good or even why we should be doing it. And then I realized passwords is a really old technology. Probably exists since the Stone Age. Cavemen had passwords. Can I get into your cave or not? And then, you know, in the Bible even, there are stories mentioned that have passwords as a way of identifying people to be the right person. So passwords is an old idea. And I'm asking myself, in the age of modern tech, of YubiKeys, why do we still have passwords? I mean, who here has a YubiKey in their pocket? Nearly everybody. Right? How often did you type a password yesterday? 5 times? 10 times? Yeah? On average, 10 times a day you type a password. How often did your browser fill in a password for you? 100 times, right? So it's a curse, if you ask me, especially in this day and age. And it's not just a curse, it's actually a problem. If it would be a mere inconvenience, I would say, yeah, forget passwords, doesn't matter. But there's a problem. So the thing that really made me think about that was that 2015 story called Instagram's $1 million bug, which is a huge security fail in Instagram setup that led to a huge data kind of breach, and somebody analyzed it. He wanted to get the $1 million from Instagram that they actually had promised for people finding serious bugs, but he didn't get it. And it shows you static keys, secrets playing a significant role. And if you think that happens only once and to them, you're wrong. This happened this year. And if you think one car maker can't do wrong, well, 2 car makers also can do wrong. Right? The question is, are you immune to that? You shake your head. I shake my head. I'm not immune to that. So I believe the root cause is actually static credentials. And if you get rid of static credentials, you can get rid of all these attack vectors against your infrastructure. So why is it actually a DevOps problem? You might ask yourself, yeah, well, DevOps, we do code, we do cool stuff. We don't care about that. Well, no, you do. So let's look at our 2 DevOps definitions from the beginning. We have our tech setup, and we have criteria number 5, replacing people interfaces. Now, I believe that passwords, tokens, API keys, certificates, SSH keys, everything that you define once and never change, are actually the glue that binds that. The people interface in this definition is actually, it manifests itself in passwords. One person invents a password, gives it the second person who puts it into their operational configuration to start a service. That's a common practice, and that's exactly where people interfaces happen, and where you should replace them with automated decisions and processes, aka something that doesn't make you fill in a password manually. And that's why it's a DevOps problem. So, who has used a passkey since they became a hype? Who thought it's a great invention? So, quick reminder, what do passkeys do? So, the server sends a challenge to the user. The user has a private key, like a PEM key, and creates a response based on that. The server has a public key, which he can use to validate it, and that's it. And obviously, you have a static credential, the private key for every service. Who knows that a YubiKey can store only 25 of those static credentials? Who busted the YubiKey already? So, it's, in my opinion, an interesting side note that nobody mentioned when the hype came out. So, in my opinion, passkeys solve a bunch of important problems. They're, for example, automation friendly. So, in my opinion, passkeys solve the problem how to do certificate-based authentication for consumers, or for like communication partners whom you don't know and with whom you don't have any relationship. I call that effective SSO for consumers. And that's it. Besides that, they have a large amount of shortcomings. No management, no backup concept, confusing UX. Each time I try to use a passkey, I get a pop-up that asks me 4 different options where to put it. And if I choose the wrong one, I might lose my passkey. There's an interesting read-up, a blog article written by William Brown, who is a veteran developer for identity management services. And he goes really into the details why passkeys have problems. And it's worth reading if you ever consider doing passkeys in a serious way. So what's the root cause? In my opinion, the root cause of the entire problem is that static credentials are actually a way of doing an offline check. So again, server sends a challenge, user has a secret, responses based on the secret, the server validates that, it succeeds, but anybody with the valid secret can pass this test. Anybody can steal the secret and gain access. That's what the attackers do. That's how hacking happens. And that's the root cause, offline validation. So the solution is obviously identity-based online validation. Same setup, user, server, but now we have an identity provider in the field. Again, login challenge, but now the user goes to his identity provider, logins or refreshes the session, gets a token, which is a short-lived credential, something that isn't worth stealing really, unless you are in real-time attacks, and they do exist. The response goes to the server. The server asks again the identity provider, gets the validation, is this actually valid? Is this user actually a user? Is he still entitled to come here? The identity confirmation might even carry an access authorization. And then we're in. By the way, this is not new. This is SAML2, OpenID Connect, whatever, old stuff. Just what happens here is we have a flow of trust via the identity provider. And I will show you later that all of you are doing that every time in the consumer space as well. In the consumer space, we have the same picture, just nobody is aware of it. So we have a single static credential that takes over the role of the master secret. So we trust digital identities instead of secrets. Secrets have a whole bunch of problems. I'm not going to read it for you. And all of them lead to exploits or security issues or whatever pains for you as DevOps. Yeah, all these problems translate into DevOps pain in the end of the day. So digital identities rely on strongly protected primary identities. Can be used by the owner. There's a strong assertion of identity, and that's important here. Typically, they use short-lived temporary credentials. And my favorite, they work for machine authentication. Because, you know, machines do 50 to 100 times more requests compared to users. So it's important that as an industry, we take machines much more into account when we design stuff. So going back to the thing I said before, if you start a picture with a user, better also add a machine next to that as a separate entity. And start your design around, we have users, we have machines, they do different stuff, they sit in different chairs. It will help you to develop better designs. So just quickly a picture for that. In the traditional world of secrets, every system that you access needs a secret. So you have a scale out of the problem around secrets. All the secret-related problems scale out. Every new service adds another stack to that problem. With the digital identities, you have a master secret that essentially protects everything else. Like in a password manager, you have a master secret that protects the passwords in your password manager, right? Well, how do you back up the passwords in the password manager? Hopefully you do. What do you do against forgetting the password of the master secret? You have another one somewhere else, right? So the same picture holds true also for digital identities. And now we come to the question, what happens if you forget a password? And that's an important thing. Our world requires us to have this type of redundancies. Nobody's perfect. We want to keep access to our data even if we forget it. Imagine you fall into a coma, you wake up, and you don't remember your passwords. What do? So there's always, you should think about a recovery option. So the lost password problem, very simple. You lose the secret, you can't log in. And the solution in the entire consumer world is called email password reset. Now what happens? We have a primary email provider. And you ask the service, send me a link, it sends you a link. you reset your password, and you can go on. And oh no, this is the same like with the digital identities. Your email is your primary identity, actually. And we have a flow of trust for all your consumer services via your email, acting as your primary identity provider. And that's a fact. And all of you who have more than one email just have more identity providers, and you need to ask yourself how you protect them. And you again go into scale out of the problem for all your email providers. And please, I hope everybody has two-factor on their email. Please, if not, go and do it. And if your provider doesn't do two-factor, go and change it. Because that's the primary attack vector for identity theft. So what should we do instead? Consumers accept the fact that your email is your digital identity. And take care of backup and disaster recovery for your email address and the content and the services. Now, who here, and I mean you're all consumers, right? In addition to your day job. So who here actually has a disaster recovery concept for the email address, like the part after the ad? So, all of you who don't, come and talk to me. I'm happy to help you. Because honestly, this is your digital identity. If it gets lost, you are digitally a nobody, a no person. And it will hurt a lot. If your current primary email ends on something, at something that you don't actually own, you are putting yourself at risk. Just as a side note. So we talk about enterprise and managed environments. Here, it's actually easier. You can eradicate static credentials for all internal systems. It is possible. Use SSO, pass-through authentication, federated logins. Make it so that as a primary basic requirement for every internal system, rule number 1 is, thou shall not enter a password. It's not a hard rule, and it's one that's very user-friendly. Use your primary account as the only digital identity, because that's how you as a company control the information your employees put into computer systems. And if you allow employees to have multiple digital identities, you lose control over what they do with it. Use machine identities, and please learn from the mistake of others. There's so many stories out there of stuff that happened. Read it, learn from it, implement it, save yourself the pain. It's worth the effort. So, some examples. And these are random things that I picked. Every system out there that is relevant to us supports federated authentication and identity management. And if it doesn't, you should ask yourself why you're using it. The slides are on my homepage, so don't worry about writing it down. All clickable. It's hard though. Look at GitHub. How many people log in to their GitHub when they do git pull or push via SSH keys? Yeah, forget about that. It's not controllable. People who steal your SSH key have full access to your company's source code and can modify it. Not good. GitHub supports other types of authentication. It's a bit painful. It's not that convenient as SSH keys. But in the sense of securing company data, it is super important. So, what keeps us from doing that? Sad story. It's fixing the basics. All of these things pay into fixing the basics that allow you to eradicate credentials in your infrastructure. And this is really the hard engineering stuff, hardcore engineering. That needs DevOps to actually do it. Regular software engineers won't manage. Now, if you want to sell it to your management, call it GitOps. Which is kind of the thing that comes after DevOps. And I gave a talk about that last time at this conference. The talk is online, unfortunately, without a recording. I'm happy to give it again. If you're interested, talk to me. You'll find it on my homepage. To summarize, it is possible to lift the curse of static credentials. It will take you out of the Stone Age. I believe it's an important thing to do and worth the rewards. It is hard. If you want to read more about that, I wrote a series of blog articles. The first is lifting the curse of static credentials. It's like the basic idea. Then there's another one, eliminating the passwords of shared accounts. That's really an interesting problem for machine accounts, technical users, team accounts, all kind of stuff like that. And the last one is a login security architecture without passwords, which essentially explains the story that I showed you before for the email as identity provider, and why that means that you don't need passwords if you have somebody's email. Thank you very much. We have hopefully a little bit time for questions. And I'm happy if I can help you in any fashion, if I can support you. I recently switched jobs, so now that's my main job, helping people answer difficult questions. Here's a little bit inspiration. And please do write me emails. I'm a bit old-fashioned. LinkedIn also works. And I'm happy to get your feedback or thoughts or requests. And thank you very much for coming here.